Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another show. Quick one, Wakili again with you this year. Today we have a very exciting guest. Everybody knows him. He speaks 5 languages. He's a professor, and I will invite him to introduce himself to us.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. My name is Franceschi. I'm French by descent, Venezuelan by birth, and Kenyan by choice. Having lived in Kenya more than these 2 gentlemen put together.
Yeah. So, Professor, I noticed that you didn't introduce yourself using your title. We'll call you Professor. Take us through your journey, just from what informed the decision that you wanted to become a lawyer, and also you tell us where you schooled.
Excellent. It's difficult to say why I became a lawyer. Perhaps I could begin by saying that I was perhaps a little bit naughty as a child, and therefore naughty children get punished, and you always see some sense of injustice behind the punishment. So you're constantly fighting for your rights.
Yeah.
But I read a book called The Iron Column by Taylor Catwell, if I remember well. That's many years ago. I may have been 14 or 15. And it's a novellated history of the life of Cicero, the great Roman lawyer and orator. And in a way that inspired me to like it. I also come from a family which is impressive. I have 2 older brothers who are lawyers, and one of them, I think, particularly inspired me to do law. He wanted to do engineering, mathematics, etc., and last minute he changed to law. I didn't understand that change, but when the time came for me to do law, I also thought, well, let me follow his footsteps. And it's very interesting because if anyone thinks that law and mathematics don't go together, they do. And this is becoming more and more real. At the law school in Strathmore, I met many students who are doing Python. That's not witchcraft. That's a coding program, artificial intelligence, and it's applied in many law firms, so for law cases, dispute cases. And well, I was shocked, and I said, well, it is true. Nowadays you cannot decide to do law because you are not good in mathematics. But on the contrary, law is like mathematics. It's about resolving problems. The difference is that your problems have many more variables, and that's why we go to intuition more than numbers. But it's equally complex, or perhaps even more complex in that sense.
So at this time, are you in Venezuela? Are you in France? Where are you when all this is happening?
I was in Venezuela and then Kenya, both. So I went to university in Venezuela, I went to university in Kenya, and I went to university in a little town also for my PhD in Pamplona, which is a University of Navarre, very prestigious university in Europe, between France and Spain. In the middle of the very close to the mountains, and I did my PhD there. It was an interesting adventure, having studied in 3 different continents and 3 different law systems, give you a whole impressive view of how similar we are. Despite having different law systems, we all aim at the same target, that is justice. Because law is there for justice.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why to have laws? I mean, when even traffic laws are there for justice, I mean that everyone has an equal opportunity to move forward. It's not what happened here in, Juja Road, or Jogo Road, or because all the matatus try to go the same direction and they block the guys coming and then nobody passes. Well, law is very much like that. It's equal opportunity for everyone, and you do the wrong thing, you are causing damage to the rest, you are punished, it's not fair, and we move society forward. Also, as a tool for development, which is something, to tell you the truth, I noticed very much when I did law, and even here, when you would see the approach to law in many of my lecturers was regulation. We have to regulate things. And you say, wait a minute, but law is not just to regulate, law is to advance and move forward and faster. So, and that's something that always called my attention. How can we use law to move faster and develop more people, not just stop others from developing, because that's in many ways what we received or inherited from law in, our colonial structures. Just to give an example, if you look at some of the professional bodies' regulations, are there to protect the field so that nobody else gets in. And to get in is very hard. If you look at engineers, architects, lawyers themselves, etc., which is okay, but we cannot use the same parameters for development.
I wanted to ask a question about systems before you mentioned them. Has it been hard for you to transition in your various education stages based on the three systems that you have studied through?
Yeah, I think it's an advantage. See, for example, many of my students, former students, get incredible, impressive opportunities to do masters in the best universities all over the world. And I always tell them, well, go for the places where other people would not go. You don't target, for example, if you did your undergraduate in Kenya, you can do your master's in South Africa, in the PhD in the UK. That's fantastic. Many people have done it, very good. But if you have the opportunity of going to France, Germany, Japan, Australia, many people don't think of it because we are not so conversant. But hey, if you do it, challenge yourself. And it's a new language, it's a new culture, it's something that enriches the person. In Strathmore Law School, when we would do the academic trips, they still do them. Every student goes for an academic trip abroad, and the way we designed it was that around $300 per year from the fees would go into a kitty. So even those who are on scholarship, the same thing, when the scholarship is paid, 300 more or less would go into that kitty. In 4 years, you have paid for the trip. So, and of course, you go at the end, or you go when you are in third year, because it's part of international law. You haven't finished paying, but the ones in first year and second year have paid, and they haven't gone. So everything balances. And the idea was precisely to give people that exposure. You see, a student, the average student in Kenya, the best he has seen or she has seen is Nairobi. And if you come from Uganda, from Congo, from several countries around the region, the same happens. The best you have seen may be Nairobi or Kampala or whatever you consider to be the best, but then of course when you go to The Hague, Cologne, Brussels, London, Paris, Strasbourg, you say, hey, this is a bigger city and they function. And you see people stopping the traffic light at 4 in the morning or 3. Okay, you don't see them too often because you don't go at 3 in the morning out there. But they stop and you say, wow, so what's wrong? What's happening here? And this is a shock for the students, which is very good and very important. The idea, we call it academic trip, but of course in 10 days, there is so much you can learn. But that learning came like a sponge, okay, like water touching the sponge. They were absorbing everything. Rule of law, why it is advantageous, why there are no policemen in every corner, in London or in The Hague or wherever, Cologne, because you don't need them. People follow the rule of law, which also explained to me 2 things. One is the fact that the rule of law for us was something imposed by the colonizer, because they undid, in a way, the systems of law or justice that traditional societies had. And they came and imposed a different system, and they pushed that system down your throat. So, of course, for us, the rule of law is something that has been imposed on us without choosing. So, to get out from the rule of law is you are clever, you are good, you managed. So, that's one of the biggest disadvantages we have now when we see people trying to cheat or circumvent the rule of law. The other thing that is interesting, it was said to me by a student when we were at the top of the pinnacle of the cathedral in Cologne, which is the biggest, the tallest building in Cologne. And from up there, he could see the city. And he told me, we have been cheated. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we have been cheated. These people were destroyed in 1945, decimated. I mean, the whole city was actually flattened, except that cathedral, by chance it stood. I said, well, they were flattened, but look at these guys now. And even in 1960, 15 years after, they were already a power in the world. Germany had rebuilt itself. We have been independent for almost 60 years, and we are still complaining. Oh, that the way we were colonized, this is the fault of, which is true in many ways. As I said, they broke the law systems, they organized boundaries which did not exist. But come on, we can do better. And we should have, in 60 years, done a bit better. We are, by the way, it's not that we are doing so badly. Kenya is a huge concern. Here in Kenya, Kenyans on Twitter, my God, everything is wrong. Yeah. But when you look at Kenya from the outside, you say, hey, Kenya has its problems. It's true, and we shouldn't compare Kenya to the worst country in the world, but to the best, and let's target that. But certainly, we are not as bad as we say we are. The beauty is that we have freedom of expression, and we can say it all. But in many countries, you cannot say it. Many countries, there is more corruption than Kenya. I know that from the Commonwealth. There are countries with more corruption, but they can't say it. You see, or their freedom is not there, or the interest is not there. So, yeah, we can do better, but certainly let's not beat ourselves so much and so hard, and let's keep on trying.
I have a follow-up question. Of course, we do understand a lawyer's role in bettering the country, but what's your opinion? What if for that one young lawyer who sat with you or was standing with you and viewing that sitting, what would you tell him is his role in taking our country where it needs to be? Do we have the power? Do we have the expertise, or even the opportunity to take our country where we need it to be?
Very interesting. You know, I will summarize this, or I will tell you what I think about this with a family story. Mm-hmm. You see, I come from a family where my father was a very important general, and my mother was very important in the banking sector. So he had the power, she had the money. We are 8 children, and the difference between the eldest and the youngest, I'm the youngest, is 10 years. So we are following each other. Later, when I grew up, they adopted twins, beautiful kids, and we are 10, really. But back then, when I am telling you this story, we were 8. Then we became 10. In the family, practically everyone has achieved the PhD level. And the ones who did not do so is because they did not need it. But what is beautiful is that I say, well, how did they manage to raise such an incredible family, where you have from one who has been nominated to a Nobel Prize in Science to all the possibilities? Say, well, 3 things they did. My parents did. And that's why it is their example, their good example. I'm not giving my own example because we just swallowed or acquired from them. One was no free time. See, we did not have free time. We had to be always doing something. If you were there on the sofa, couch, lazy, they would make you clean some wall, move some furniture, do something. Second was no money. We were really beggars. I mean, I think I became a professional beggar in school because you had to do barter trade. Yeah. You see, you had money either for the sandwich or for the chips or the soda, but not two. See, you had to either split the sandwich and borrow tell someone give you half of a sandwich and then he gives you half a soda or something, but you had to do some barter trade. So the value of money was something very important to us. I mean, we learned it, that there was no money. We did not care, oh, they're earning big salaries. That was not an issue. It's simply there's no money for you and for them because they gave us example. And the third was a sense of piety. There was no obliged prayers at home, but we saw our parents praying, going to church and always a sense of fairness. I remember that the service in the house, the people, house girls, they always used to eat before us, and they had the same food or even better. So it's not that they ate at the end, but at the beginning. Why do I tell you this long answer for a small question? Because I think for every human being, when you want to succeed, you have to have those three things in mind. Okay? You have no time, so therefore you have to work hard and work well and have a schedule and be on the ball, kind of. Okay? You cannot be like those soccer players who are never seen. If you are playing the big leagues in an international match, you have to be seen, kind of. Second, no money. Well, you have to make very good use of your money. And this is a huge problem with us lawyers. One, because some people in our profession drink too much. Others, they overspend. For example, when you get a job as an associate and maybe you are earning money you had never earned in your life, they change the status. They go and buy a big car and they move to a big apartment. So, well, but can you sustain that? No, you can't. And as you can't, you start compromising your morals because you have to pay for it. You have to maintain the Mercedes, which is much more expensive than maintaining a Beats. But you did not want to be seen in a Beats, even though that's what you can afford. Then you go into the chini ways, as we call them here, to survive. And third, the sense of piety. Well, look, if you don't have a transcendental or supernatural objective, it's very easy to get lost. I mean, whether you believe in God or you call him by different names, or you believe in nature, whatever it is, I mean, it's up to each person, but you have to be committed to something that transcends yourself. So it's not just me and my money, but it's something beyond me, beyond myself. So after you've given us your parents' story, now I see your parents are very African as ours. So, incidentally, in Africa, there were 4 possibilities for a child. You do either medicine, law, engineering, or you are a disgrace to the family. That's said by a Nigerian comedian. Excellent. So you are synonymous with one of the best law schools in the country, Strathmore Law School. Just give us the journey as to how you came into being. You are the first dean, if I'm not wrong. So just give us the journey, the conversation. How did you decide to go there? How you approach, probably. Yes. Yeah. Excellent. Well, you see, it's a very, very beautiful story. one day I was approached and I was told, we want to begin a law school and we want you to be the dean. Well, actually, they were asking me to help. And I said, well, fine, perfect, no problem. Then at some point, Professor Bote, who was helping in that process and had been working very hard in the curriculum and the systems, told me, I want you to be the dean. And I said, well, I cannot be, you are my professor, I cannot be your dean. And she said, why not? Which to me was a very beautiful example of humility. Because, well, somebody who has taught you and who has so much prestige tells you, yes, you have to come be the dean. Well, it was a big act of faith. Now, something interesting, when we started thinking about the law school, what came to my mind in a beautiful way was, well, we want a law school that will be different. And different how? Well, different in that sense that we will not look at law as a way for regulation, for stopping or preventing others from advancing, but as a way of development, pushing everyone forward. So we wanted a law school that was modern, innovative, thinking out of the box, and that made law not just deep, but also enjoyable. And we thought of it like a mobile phone, where you have the hardware and the software. So the hardware is the mobile itself. It has to be a good machine, otherwise it keeps crashing. And that mobile, in this case, that hardware was the curriculum, the facilities, and the lecturers. Okay, that's the hardware of a law school. And the facilities have to be good, so we plan it as a beautiful facilities. Okay, the business school in Strathmore had moved to a new building, so we took over the old business school, which was very small, but was beautiful. The professors, we had to think out of the box, because as you know, back then, this is in 2011, the only professor of law woman in the country was Patricia Bote. So, and the men were very few, were 6 or 7. PhDs were less than 20. So you had to think out of the box also with the professors and the curriculum. We wanted precisely a curriculum that was forward-looking. So that was important. That was the hardware. But then now came the software, what made that mobile attractive, usable. You could have an iPhone, but if you don't have applications, you can do nothing with it. So the apps, the attractive, the thing that caught people, well, all those accessories that are not essential, but help people fall in love, young people fall in love with law. For example, the academic trip abroad. I explained that at the beginning. Second, the laptop project. Every student upon registration got a laptop.
Okay.
And why did we do that? Because we did a study. It was pure mathematics. You say, okay, how much do we have to pay for taking our students to the computer labs in the university for 4 years? Then you say, well, this much. How much is a laptop? If we give them a laptop in first year and we forget about the labs, this much. And it was less. It was less. And besides, this laptop is yours. You can cook chapatis if you want with it, but it's yours.
Yeah.
And you will take care of it, because the computer labs are nobodies, and, well, things get broken or spoiled, and it's more difficult to maintain. So we did that, and originally we faced a little bit of opposition. Opposition is fantastic because it makes you be better and do it better. Opposition, why? Because other schools said, well, why law is getting laptops and we are not? the truth is that we were charging a bit more, but also because when they told me that, I said, look, why make management decisions based on envy? It doesn't work. It's never a plot. So instead of thinking why law students are getting it and I'm not, think what can I do to get it also? And of course, it was beautiful because the people thought like that and they started studying the possibility. And in the end, this pilot project of the law school became a project for the whole university. So every student in Strathmore, upon registration, got a laptop. And that meant you could do away with the computer labs, except those very specialized, but that's different. You did away with printing. There was no more printing. You could send things online. You could use anti-plagiarism programs like Tiny and see if people were plagiarizing or not. And besides, was prophetic, because when COVID came and struck, the only university, and this is the Ministry of Education was saying that in this meeting yesterday, that was ready was Strathmore, because every student, rich or poor, middle class, intelligent or thick, had a laptop.
Yeah.
And of course, it was very easy to arrange with Safaricom for bundles, this, that, but everyone had the classroom in their homes, whether you live in Corogosho or in Lavington. So it was a very beautiful speed. So, well, all these things are well, and with the professors, we plan also something exciting. Invited professors. So we look for the best guys teaching a specific subject in Harvard, in Oxford, in Manchester, Stanford, NYU, in very good universities, in Navarre, in Cologne, and they would come to teach, to co-teach with a local person for a month in summer. We could not afford to pay them a salary, but we offered them the ticket, accommodation, and a safari. And that did the trick. And then they would spend here 3 or 4 weeks co-teaching, so our students were exposed to the best outside there. And this cost us less sometimes than getting a person even from Kenya. So, but anyway, we always put them to co-teach so we could at the same time enhance the local capacity. So those were I think the apps. Well, the foreign language. Every student in Strathmore had to do a foreign language as well. French, German, Chinese, Spanish, they would choose. But that also gave them another dimension. And with these things, well, the law school became something different.
So we have previously brought a guest into this show, and they were big on regulation of numbers. Mm-hmm. The argument was always that certain career choices need to be regulated because of the demand and the supply in the market. And it's the same conversation that is being held, though not outspoken, at the Kenya School of Law. Maybe you could talk more about innovation as opposed to regulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you see, I'm a friend of innovation and freedom.
Yeah.
In a sense, because regulation is the innovation of one person. Okay? Who could be the CEO, the chairman, whoever, to say we only need 1,000 lawyers. You see, how do you determine that? And why should that person have that power? So, of course, regulation ends up in many ways being the innovation of the few. Okay, and you have a monopoly of innovation. We say, well, this person has made it, has done it, has studied for years, have passed the bar school. Why are you going to fail him or her? I mean, who are you to determine that the market is clogged? Really, the market will clog itself oh, now lawyers are not earning as much as before. Thank God. Because I hope none of us did law to become rich. You see, I mean, when I did law, I knew that I would be poorer than my clients. They are the ones paying you.
Yeah.
So it's absurd to say, well, I did law to become rich. And besides, law is about justice, and it is unfair to fail somebody who has made it. You see, an exam is regulating the end process. You are regulating, actually, the outcome, not the process. So when you go into determining numbers, you are putting a cap on the process. Then you say, well, fine, it is true, not everyone should be a lawyer, but that's what law schools are there for. And that's where law schools have to be demanding. So the fault is not, you see, you should not put the cap at the end, but at the beginning. This person who became a lawyer, who got into law school, does he or she have what it takes to end that career? Or are you admitting everybody because you are just desperate for money? One of the things that saved Strathmore from becoming one more mediocre law school, as we find many in the world, was the cap on numbers in admission. Okay, we said, well, the classroom can have 75. Not one more, not one less. And there were 75. See, and there were 300 applicants. 500 applicants. I mean, 300 would have made it. But say, well, you have to select the 75 best. There is where you put the cap. And the rest, they can decide what to do. They could go to another university or do engineering or medicine because maybe science is their vocation, or matatu driving, which is a very good profession for the one who likes driving. But of course, don't let the person come into a university because you want the money and then fail them at the end. Because what does a person do? I mean, I have found law students who have finished law and they cannot join KSL because they don't have the 200,000 or 250,000 it costs. And of course, it's very unfair. I mean, it should not happen. If you took a guy through a scholarship in university, well, that scholarship should not end in university.
Yeah.
It should end when you become a professional because you are between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
You can't practice and you can get the money to pass the exam or to sit the exam.
Yeah.
Right. There's a question we've always asked guests who've been here in the past and who have been in the teaching profession, either fully or partly. And they echo something that they think the market, in terms of the employer, says about the young us who are joining the profession. I know there is no empirical data to prove it, but they say that the crop of lawyers that are graduating from law schools in Kenya is underwhelming in terms of how they perform their work and how they deliver. And now, having seen the product of what you cultivated at Strathmore, you now have lawyers in the market who have practiced for a few years. What have you heard? And from your own opinion, what do you think is still missing in bringing them up to speed as to what this group of older lawyers or employers expect of them?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. The first question, whether it is true, it's true. We talk a lot without empirical data, and that's bad because it's basically based on impressions. My personal experience, and in this I think I can claim empirical data, is, I will say it in 2 points. First, the students I graduated knew a lot more than I knew when I finished law school. They were much more informed. Even the best, the 10 best, no, practically all of them. A lot of information, a lot of knowledge, incredible understanding of the law. So I don't believe the story that in the past we were what I think happens is that in the past we were the one-eyed man in the world of the blind. You see, I mean, for some people, I mean, 10 lawyers finished law in Nairobi. Of course, I mean, it's very easy to know you knew it all. But I don't think it is true. There is more competition, there are law schools that perhaps are not doing a good job, that is true. But generally speaking, I was very impressed. And I will give you an example that happened. We were in the International Court of Justice in The Hague. The president of the court was giving a lecture. The president of the International Court of Justice in The Hague giving a lecture to the students. And then he was explaining, together with another judge, explaining in very simple terms, well, the court is like this, and we have 15 judges, sometimes 16, and this and that, and a case comes, etc. You have any questions? One girl stood up and said, sir, in the case of Nicaragua versus El Salvador, you interpreted the margin of appreciation in this and this way. Recently, the International Criminal Court has reinterpreted the margin of appreciation like this. If you had to make that decision today that you wrote, what would you say? The judge looked at me and said, are these master students? I said, no, this is a second year girl and the graduate. Well, he was shocked. He said, well, I could not have asked that question when I was in second year. So we are being very unfair when we make those blanket statements that nowadays it's a mess, that now they're only interested in mobiles. Hey, they have incredible information there and they are so informed. I mean, it's incredible. It is true, there will always be people who are the exception, but let's not judge by exceptions. And the second point, quickly, is I do at the Commonwealth hundreds of interviews. And these are people from all across the 54 countries, 2.6 billion people. Kenyans who come for interviews embarrass me. They embarrass me because they do so well that if I have to choose more Kenyans, they say, you came here to choose Kenyans. Then I say, well, no, look, but it's number one. So much so that nowadays when there is a Kenyan among the interviewees, I refuse myself because they are going to accuse me of bringing Kenyans. But they always do exceedingly well. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I will tell you, we advertised for 7 positions of young professionals. It's a program, 2-year program at the Commonwealth. 3,000 applications came in. 400 were from Kenya. Many people wanted to come. When they gave me the list, the 100 best students. 40 of them were from Kenya. And I told them, reduce this to 20. And from those 28 were from Kenya. And these are people competing with graduates from all over the world. Law, they were law. And, well, I said, well, I cannot do these interviews. Because certainly, I mean, you see, if you out of 20, you're interviewing 8 Kenyans, and some of them would be known to me because I taught very many of students all over Kenya, then of course there would be a conflict. So I don't believe really that we are producing people who are less prepared or less clever. We are producing more. There could be exceptions. But I think our education system is impressive in many ways.
We have a university now, in your opinion, and in empirical data that you have undertaken, that is outperforming the rest, having been here for just a few years. Is there an avenue where that system can be replicated in the other universities, so that at some point you have all-rounded lawyers graduating from all universities?
Or is it proprietary information?
No, you see, no. Here, I have the copyright, you have the right to copy. But it's not unique to Strathmore. It also happened in Irvine Law School in California. I met one of my good friends, Erwin Chemerinsky, now he's the Dean of Berkeley, UC Berkeley. He was the founding Dean of UC Irvine. This was a new law school. In 4 years, it was number 8 in the US. In the US, I mean, incredible miracle. And I think partly they use a similar system. You see, we are so well prepared in Kenya that we can do it. But it's a matter of willing to do it. When we began the law school, okay, it is true, Strathmore was the first multiracial and multireligious tertiary educational institution in the whole of English-speaking Africa. Groundbreaking in many ways. But Strathmore was not known for humanities. So when Strathmore began law, say, well, what is this? It's like MIT, of course, keeping distances. MIT starting a law school.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You say, well, wow, this is a little bit too out of. But the beautiful thing was that precisely because of that, we managed to somehow attract the best of the best in many ways. I mean, in some cases. And when you attract the best, you see the students is what makes the university. So the best students will put so much pressure on the institution and the lecturers that you have to be up to standards. It's not the other way around. Mm. So where have most universities failed is in admission. Why? Because you start a law school to make money. For many universities, the idea was, let's make money. Oh gosh, we need money. Open a law school. And then you start admitting, of course, to make money opening a law school, you have to admit at least 200 students. And that was the drama we were facing in the country. Okay, and that happened to many universities. So we limited the numbers. And for us to be able to do that, we made a 10-year plan with the 15-year plan, with the university. We told them, look, this is a business plan, 15 years. We are not going to make money in the first 3.5 years. This will be a loss of 40 million shillings, a lot of money. But from after 3.5 years, you start breaking even because you have the whole school complete. And then after 7 years, now you have recovered your investment. And then from then on, you focus on research and more, so you are reinvesting the income. But I really don't believe in a good law school if you have profit maximization as the aim.
So you've passionately talked about the numbers. You've in another question you talked about the applicants being 500, then being wilted down to 300, then all the way to 75. So what informs this number of 75 students?
Yes, we had an internal test, an entrance test. We modeled it similar to LSAT in the US, but our own version. And every candidate had to present that test and an oral interview. And based on that, so we made a decision. So basically there were 3 parameters. That was the test, entrance test, the oral interview, where you can assess also attitude. One is for aptitude, then attitude, and KCSE or whatever international, because we had students from around 23 African countries in the law school. So, well, with those 3 parameters, we could make a decision, fair decision, sort of, which was balanced in terms of gender, in terms of aptitude, attitude, etc. So, for example, some people don't know how important attitude is. but I remember interviewing somebody who came in, he had straight A's, and he came in and he sat on the seat like this. He almost put his shoes on top of the table, and he was telling us, answering questions, totally uninterested.
Yeah.
Well, of course, we did not admit him. Because, this person maybe was brought here by force, or he thinks that he is going to make it because he has an A.
Yeah.
And these people, unless they change the attitude, they do damage to the system and to justice and to, you imagine an arrogant lawyer like that. Well, it's a person who is a threat.
There are many.
No, but some of them put up a show. But really, when you deal with them, it's a bit of a part of advertising themselves.
Yeah.
Right. I think the one thing we did capture is your journey professionally. So maybe you can tell us, after school, where you trained, how your careers have morphed over time, ending where you are now.
Excellent. Okay, you see, it's interesting. You see, when I studied, I never thought I would be a teacher or a lecturer or a diplomat. Those are things that somehow happen. I don't know whether by chance or providence, but you end up finding yourself. Something very interesting, I really never had to apply for a job, except the Commonwealth, because that one you have to apply. But I finished my second term as dean of the law school, having been the founding dean. They wanted me to do a third term, and I said, and it was agreed, look, better not, because this is what happened in many countries, that people in power stick to power because the people are asking you. So I said, well, look, I think part of a good institution or institution building is leadership transition.
Yes.
And it's absurd for me to continue being the dean always, because one, I will be the ceiling for brilliant people who are there and are comfortable because the dean is there. No, let's expose them, let's open the ceiling and the roof and remove the roof and make them be beaten by the rain, sort of, in a good way. Then, at the same time, if you don't have a leadership transition, you really do not know if the systems you have set up will function. So I explained, look, it's better I go now, we have a transition. It can be painful, because when people have only known one dean, it can be painful. But if things go wrong, I'm still there to help, advise, or whatever it is. So we agreed I would take a sabbatical. Then a sabbatical, why a sabbatical? Because it's a custom. After you finish your terms in a university, after several years, you get a sabbatical, so that you go away for a year, and the new dean or whoever replaces you feels free to make his own or her own decisions. So you are not interfering, kind of. So I went to Oxford University and Berkeley. And when I was in Berkeley, well, at the same time when I got my sabbatical, certain people in the country, important people, got to know that I was no longer the dean, and they encouraged me to apply to the Commonwealth. President Kenyatta gave me a very beautiful letter of recommendation. I did the interviews, and well, I was told that I was selected. I came out as number one, and well, I left Berkeley and went back to London. Now I'm in London for the maximum is 2 terms of 3 years for the same reason. So you don't get stuck there and don't think. But I'm on leave of absence. So the plan is to come back and continue teaching, academia, education. At the Commonwealth, what I do is very interesting because I report to the Secretary General, and my office looks after anything related to political affairs, democracy, elections, rule of law, judicial transformation, governance, peace, countering violence and extremism. So I have a fantastic team of heads who are very innovative, working very hard, and well, trying to see how to move the Commonwealth forward. Many beautiful things have happened, great experiences. One of them, for example, in Zambia, when they had elections last August, there was a little bit of a problem because the tensions were very high, a polarization between the camp of President Lungu and the former president and then President Hichilema. And well, they did not see eye to eye. And when the election happened, I was there with Kikwete, Jakaya Kikwete, President Kikwete, and we had to go to talk to Lungu to concede because the election results were out, and then Hichilema to forgive, concede, forgive, until the end. Lungu called Hichilema in national TV, my brother Hichilema, and conceded, and Hichilema called Lungu, my brother Lungu, and they shook hands, and the whole country amazingly immediately passed from depolarization to peace, serenity. Everything was peaceful and incredibly beneficial. For a great example of from both, from Lungu, because well, he lost an election and he left, and maybe people in his party did not want him to leave, and Lungu because, and Hichilema, because well, I mean, he realized that Zambia was bigger than the separation between him and Lungu, and he moved on and is doing great things there.
So, and this is a very personal question for me, and it's good that you've come to the show and I have someone now to ask this. The concept of Commonwealth, from my perspective, I've always viewed it as it being founded on Stockholm syndrome. What do you have to say about that?
Mm-hmm.
If you have to.
Yes. No, surely. Well, you see, it's beautiful. Certainly, the Commonwealth, some people misunderstand it as a post-colonial structure or even as a colonial structure. And the truth is that was the Commonwealth at the beginning. You see, when the Commonwealth was born, the idea in many ways was not to lose the links with the former colonies that were going for independence. And incidentally, and this is very beautiful, at least I fell in love with this idea. The Commonwealth is what is this today, thanks in many ways to three great African men, leaders: Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, and Kenneth Kaunda. These three men, when their countries got independence, they joined the Commonwealth. And when they realized that the Commonwealth was a department within the Foreign Service, the Foreign Office of the United Kingdom, they went to London with letters of withdrawal, in a way. Not the three of them, one of them specifically, but the three of them were pushing for the same thing. That is, wait a minute, we joined this as a platform of equal partners where we could come and articulate our interests, our ideas, and our ideals to the world. So, for as long as the Commonwealth is a department in the Foreign Office, we are not equal. And they were going to withdraw, and there was panic in London. And immediately the agreement was reached that the Secretariat would be founded. And the Secretariat was precisely turning the Commonwealth as a colonial, quasi-post-colonial structure into a family of nations that shared many commonalities: language, history, institutions, pains, joys, sorrows, in many ways, that would come together to move forward together and see how to learn from each other. So these 54 countries, most of them were colonies of the United Kingdom, 2 of them were not, and perhaps more will join in the future, have come together as equal partners. And interestingly, they wanted it in Nkrumah, Nyerere, Kaunda as a platform also to fight apartheid. So it was thanks to the Commonwealth that in many ways South Africa saw itself in the need of opening up, releasing Nelson Mandela, and giving in to the international pressure, because they had been founding members of the Commonwealth and they had been on the dock somehow. So that's a very beautiful story. You learn a lot when you are in the Commonwealth, and when you see Nauru, that is a small little island with 11,000 inhabitants, having the same power as the United Kingdom or India or Kenya or Nigeria with 200 million. Well, I mean, Nauru or Dominica with 70,000 has the same power. So it's a very interesting dynamics where the small states have become powerful. It's the only platform where they are really powerful.
Yeah.